Hello and welcome to this episode of Grant Thornton's In Conversation With podcast. I'm Richard Waite, People and Culture Director, and I'm really passionate about early careers and trainee recruitment, and it's where I started my career at the firm back in 2010. I'm joined today by Matt and Nick, and we're going to be talking about less traditional routes into the profession. But first of all, let's get started with some intros. Matt, I'll come to you first.
Hi, so I'm Matt. I've been with Grant Thornton just coming up to 2 years now. Prior to that, I ran my own business for 16 years, and I felt it was time for a career change, so looked at firms where I could make that shift. And Grant Thornton was the one that picked me, and I picked them. So
Excellent. Nick?
I'm Nick. I'm an associate director in the VAT team for just over 2 years now. But I've been referred to as a boomerang, so I actually joined in 2015, spent about 3.5 years, and then left and came back.
Excellent. And tell me about what you did before you joined Grant Thornton the first time round.
Before I joined Grant Thornton, I was a police officer. I spent about 2 years, just over 3 years in the police as a frontline police officer. Quickly, it took me 3 years to realise it was not the career for me, and made the shift.
Excellent. So I think sharing your stories today of kind of alternative routes into the organisation and into a training programme like the ones we have at Grant Thornton will be really inspiring to those people out there who might be watching or listening who are thinking maybe they're ready for a career change. But before we get into that, let's start with some of our simpler questions for today. So if you can give me 3 words that describe your career at Grant Thornton to date and the 3 skills that you have that you think make you really successful in your role. Nick?
So first 3 words to describe my career at Grant Thornton, I would say, are challenging, varied and stable. And then 3 skills that I think make me good at my job are naturally inquisitive, humility, or the ability to recognise when I need help and support, and also the desire to help and support others when needed.
Great. Matt?
So I think the 3 words that spring to mind about my career so far at Grant Thornton probably pacey, both in work and style, but flexible. And I think I'd probably reiterate Nick because challenging. There's always going to be challenging elements to it. But the qualities, 3 qualities that I think I've brought to the role and that are important: detail oriented. I'd say diligent is important in the work we do, and probably personally to me, sort of bringing a freelance mentality to the job, and that element of, always striving to do the best you can on your last piece of work. So you're only as good as your last job, sort of thing, was the phrase that springs to mind.
Great. So you've both shared as part of your introductions a little bit more about your kind of journey to Grant Thornton and the career changes that you both made. Big, significant, life-changing decisions made after you'd started other careers, started your own business. Can you talk to me a little bit more about that journey? What was it that kind of changed your mind, and what was it about Grant Thornton that attracted you to the programme that you ended up joining? So we'll come to Matt first.
Yeah, so as I said, I ran my own business for 16 years in the live events and theatre, provided production services to sort of theatre and live event sector. Thinking specifically the year before COVID, I spent 240 nights away from home, and COVID was particularly difficult for our industry, and it gave me time to reflect and think about what I wanted my work-life balance to look like. And so I was looking for something that would give me a more stable, more sort of structured work-life balance, but also something that was a career, not just a job. And aware that doing that a bit later in life, there's fewer options perhaps open, but Grant Thornton had a programme that I was able to join as a new starter, but that would give me that element of the ability to progress and the ability to learn alongside a career.
Great. Nick?
At my old job in the police, I knew I wasn't happy, and quite quickly I recognised that. And my wife at the time, she still is my wife, but at the time she used to work for Grant Thornton, and I would hear kind of about Grant Thornton and kind of the bad stuff and the good stuff. And I thought, in comparison, the bad stuff here didn't feel so bad compared to kind of what I was dealing with. But I knew I didn't want to work with numbers, which was very much what she was doing. She worked in audit and accounts, and I knew I didn't want to do that. But when you're at university or college, it's quite hard to, you don't really have sight of the jobs or careers available within accountancy and finance. You assume everyone is an accountant. And so it was only because I was with her and knew about Grant Thornton that way that I knew that there were other kind of options available. And I knew that they then had a graduate scheme, and that's what, thought, well, that's an option. Have a look and see what kind of jobs are available. And off the back of that, I spoke to a VAT manager and asked him about kind of his day job. And he told me that for the most part, his day job was interpreting legislation and writing reports. And I thought, well, that's kind of what I do. It's kind of what I do now, whilst I was in the police. And so, recognised that I had some transferable skills there, and there was an opportunity to kind of branch off and try something completely different.
Great. Well, we'll come on to transferable skills shortly. But before we do, I guess the obvious question in my mind, if you don't mind me saying so, is that when you joined, you might have been a little bit older than the rest of the individuals in your cohort who were maybe just finishing school or just finishing university. How was that at the time? How did you make it work? How did you kind of fit within that cohort?
Yeah, that I found really tough, actually, especially learning about their backgrounds. And a lot of them came from university background but had studied accountancy and finance or business and finance, and it felt like they'd had all the right experience and I had none. I did feel that was a big challenge. I felt like a very small fish in a big pond again. I took the time to kind of recognise that it doesn't just come overnight, and I would have skills from working background that would assist. But I think it was just kind of accepting and giving myself the time to realise that it would take time to adjust and fit in.
Matt.
Yeah, I mean, I think reiterating some of the challenges there, really. Like, I think there was a moment when I was sitting in one of my early classroom studies, and I was staring down at my calculator that I'd dug out since A-levels, realising that it was older than some of the colleagues I was sitting next to. I think you realise that you're possibly at a much similar life experience than some of your much more senior colleagues, but from a career perspective, you're with a lot of the people who are literally half your age, and so finding where you fit within that from a social context and an office context can sometimes be challenging. But there is a positive to that you there's a lot of inbuilt trust in that experience, rightly or wrongly. So actually, there's positives out of every challenge, and I think also you have to remind yourself that you're coming into a world where you don't have however many years of experience behind you. So you're leaving something that you're incredibly comfortable in and probably quite confident in, and then you're coming back, you're starting back at the beginning in lots of unknowns, lots of things where you'll reach the end of your knowledge, but that's okay because that's part of the training pathway and that's part of the experience. No one's expecting you, however old you are, starting a new career to know everything. And whilst clients may assume you've got more knowledge, there's always support within Grant Thornton from senior colleagues and your peers to sort of fill those gaps.
Okay, so I'm guessing joining a trainee scheme when you're already established in a career somewhere else or had been established in a career somewhere else, I guess you might be feeling confident because you're a little bit more mature and you've kind of got a bit more lived experience, but I guess there'll be also a wobble maybe because you're joining at that bottom rung of the ladder. How did that feel and how did you balance those two things when you joined?
Yeah, so I think it is always going to be a challenge when you're starting from scratch again. Like you say, you are at that bottom rung of the ladder. But what I found at Grant Thornton, I've had two really great people managers since my start, and what they've supported me with is allowing me to basically work my way up that ladder as quick and as comfortable as I feel I can go. And you're not going to be held back by wanting to progress, and you're not going to be held back at striving to succeed. And the good thing about having a wealth of soft skills and a wealth of experience before joining, although it might not be in the technical discipline that you're focusing on, all that builds to actually, once you've got that technical knowledge to add on to that, you're already a rounded individual. You're already, having all the confidence with dealing with clients or colleagues. As you start to work towards running projects, you probably already got that experience that you can add on to all the skills you're learning as part of your training pathway. So yes, it's a challenge at the start, but as soon as you learn how to harness the skills you've already got, actually, you can really use them to your advantage.
Great. And I think one of the clear benefits of having had a career before joining one of our programs here at Grant Thornton is you bring lots of these transferable skills, lots of experience, lots of life experience, lots of ways of dealing with situations that maybe those coming straight from school or university haven't yet got. So thinking about transferable skills specifically from the careers that you had before Grant Thornton that have helped you in your career here, what have they been, Nick?
Transferable skills, I would say. So, from a practical point of view, the ability to read legislation, interpret legislation. A lot of what we do as VAT advisors is just that, and read case law. And I've been doing that for 5-6 years before. So that was a transferable skill that helped sort of no end. Ability to build rapport with people. That was a really great transferable skill that I had from working in the police. You see people from all backgrounds, all situations, some good, some bad, and so that allowed me to kind of hit the ground running and not be afraid to talk to anyone in essence. I'd say those were the two kind of biggest ones for me.
Matt?
I think from my previous career, it was very technical driven, and it was quite. The technology was always changing in my previous career. So although a very different technical discipline, that desire to be learning and that constant desire to be upskilling lends itself quite well to certainly the early stages of my career at Grant Thornton, but also thinking longer term about the way that what we do in tax practice is always going to be changing. You're going to always be having to keep up with changes. So it's always that willingness and that self-driven learning. As I mentioned, from a freelance environment, you are only as good as your last job. So it's that constant desire to do the best work you can, and that constant desire to make sure that the work you're delivering is as high a quality as possible. And I mean, in a very practical sense, the industry I used to work in, there's that phrase, the show must go on. There was always a definite deadline at 7:30, you had to start that show, come what may. So that attitude of delivering work on time to a standard, going above and beyond is transferable to any career really, not just at Grant Thornton, but anywhere. But it does work, particularly well when you're trying to progress in the early part of your career.
Fascinating. Nick, you described yourself as a boomerang, which means you joined Grant Thornton, you left, and then you've come back, luckily for us. Can you talk to us a little bit about kind of what you did when you left and what it was that attracted you back to Grant Thornton for the second time?
Sure. So when I left, I actually, I always maintain this, I never left because I was unhappy at Grant Thornton. It was very much an opportunity came up to join a brand new company, and with a view to potentially get ownership and things like that. But things didn't work out as well as I'd hoped. And so another role opened up at Grant Thornton, and so for me it was I liked that I knew a lot of the people that still worked here. The people talk about the culture at Grant Thornton, and it is true. It is very people focused. It is flexible. It's generally a very nice place to work, and so that's kind of what drew me back really.
Excellent. Any regrets?
No, not yet.
Excellent. So we talked about transferable skills, and I guess what your previous careers helped you bring to your roles at Grant Thornton. And I'm guessing there have been challenges and bumps in the road along the way, maybe that have been more pronounced because of the fact that you changed career. I guess anything that you can share in terms of those bumps in the road that other people thinking about a career change might benefit from hearing at this stage? Nick?
Sure. So I think one of the first things it felt like almost a step back was starting studying again. I felt like I'd kind of already been there, done that. I'd been to university. I'd done a diploma as well after I'd left university, and then had to start all over again, studying for my professional qualifications. And so that was almost, it felt kind of unfair, if you like, having to do it all again. That was a real challenge, and also, again, moving on to a different stage in life, you use your annual leave for different purposes, with families and whatever, and children, and you're having to use some of that for study. Again, felt like another challenge, another kind of tough pill to swallow, if you like. But you quickly learn that it's very short term. It's short term pain for long term gain, and so it is worth it. That's one challenge. Another challenge, again, I think I touched on earlier already, with the sort of the perception that everyone else is kind of already ahead of you because they've studied XYZ qualification, or they've got kind of experience in finance and accounting. But just giving yourself the credit and time to know that it won't come overnight, and also just recognise that if you need help, someone else will be able to help you and give you the answer you need. And then I guess lastly was kind of learning about making that distinction between time pressure. So in my previous job, if you had to know the answer there and then. Nature of policing, you had to, you couldn't just call someone up, you had to deal with it. And it's obviously not the same in this field. And so making that adjustment and recognising that asking for help doesn't mean you've lost or that you've failed.
Interesting. Matt?
I think thinking about some of the challenges I faced, we work sort of across the sort of national service line now in tax, and so it means we work with lots of different teams and lots of different colleagues. And I think one of the challenges I felt was sometimes those colleagues forgetting how junior I am, and maybe there's a little expectation gap between what I can achieve and what a colleague might want me to achieve. And it's just that little bit of reminding every so often, and it's that point of reminding them that you are still very junior, and although you might present yourself as being more experienced, you don't have the knowledge to back that up. So, but the flip side of that is that the trust that you gain from colleagues and clients is easier to win. And I guess another challenge sort of within my journey so far is just remembering that you've come from a place where you might have had a little bit more authority, or you might have had a little bit more, self-control, or a little bit more of that sort of ability to manage your own time and work, and you become a much smaller piece in a much bigger machine. So you've got to remember that there is more support out there. So, it's not all on your own shoulders, but at the same time, there is stronger systems in place that, sometimes are a little bit friction if you're not used to that, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Finally, thinking about others out there who might be watching or listening, who might be thinking about a career change for themselves, what advice would you give? Matt, we'll come to you.
I think the advice I'd give for people looking to a career change would be research the firm, make sure that the firm's ethos and their values align with what you want, because the job will probably be relatively comparable in lots of places, but the way it's done will be different, and the opportunities open to you will be different at each firm. So it's more about the place than the job, probably would be a big piece of advice. And also probably not being too hard on yourself. Like you are not going to know everything, be that technical or system or process on day one, even if you think that you used to in your old career. Don't put that much pressure on yourself, because no one's going to be expecting that of you, and you have time to learn that.
Great advice. Nick?
I think for me, the thing that really actually spurred me on to apply for the role in the first place was speaking to someone that actually does it day to day. So you get a good feel, obviously, through recruitment process and whatnot about what the job will entail. But prior to that conversation, I still felt like it was completely different to what I do now, and I would never have understood really what it is day to day without that initial conversation with that manager. And so I would say absolutely just do that. And the type of people we work with, I couldn't imagine any manager or anyone in the team that would refuse to have that conversation. So I think that's one thing I would suggest doing. And then to echo Matt's comments about giving yourself time and credit, and don't be so hard on yourself. You're not going to know everything. And there was always a perception when I joined, whether that's just isolated to me, I don't know, but the thought that people above, they had all the answers, they knew everything, but it's not the case. We all talk at the same level about different queries and ask the same questions that we would have thought back then, the person knew off by heart. So
Excellent. Thank you both for sharing your insights and stories today. I'm hoping that it's inspired some more individuals out there who might be thinking about a career change to consider applying to roles at Grant Thornton. So I really appreciate you taking the time today. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining this edition of Grant Thornton's In Conversation With podcast. We look forward to you joining a future episode very soon.